Good afternoon. The joint oversight hearing on the Subcommittee of Economic Opportunity and the Subcommittee on Technology and Modernization will now come to order. As you've heard me say many times, these subcommittees are not bipartisan, they are nonpartisan. And I'm very proud of my Democrat colleagues and also my Republican colleagues to adhering to that. There is no room for that in this committee, and it will not be tolerated. Today, we've come together once again to look out for the interests of our veterans. Our veterans fought hard for this country, and we owe it to them to fight hard for their interests here in Congress. Today, our subcommittees come together to once again examine how we can work with the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs to improve the lives of veterans through the digital GI Bill. Good afternoon, sir. The digital GI Bill is intended to streamline GI Bill claims processing by consolidating antiquated legacy IT systems and automating adjudication of most claims. Some of these systems are over 30 years old and must be modernized. Since our last hearing in July 2022, VA has accomplished quite a bit. There have been 5 releases of the software. More than half of the supplemental claims are now automated, and the enrollment manager system is now up and running. This is good news and shows a tremendous amount of progress. However, the digital GI Bill system that is being developed by VA and Accenture is partly the result of past IT failures. Other companies have attempted to modernize. The systems have failed, and the VA has wasted millions of dollars. We're here to ensure that this does not happen again. In March, I received a call from the Secretary about the digital GI Bill failing to process veterans' monthly housing allowance. The benefits delivery network initially failed to pay approximately 282,000 student veterans. And while these issues were resolved nearly immediately, there are still 4,000 veterans that received late checks due to this mistake. This problem is reminiscent of 2018 when a similar failure resulted in thousands of students waiting weeks and months in some cases for their claim to be processed, which led to significant delays in students receiving their monthly housing allowance. Time and time again, student veterans are being left in limbo because of the VA's failures, and that is completely unacceptable. Also in March, the new enrollment manager system went live. VA had insisted the launch in January at the beginning of the spring semester, despite an outpouring of concern from the schools about the problems that this would cause. That means you people are not listening. The subcommittee was eventually able to persuade the VA to listen to the boots on the ground and push the go live back, set off the demo, affect delays in the development of the system that no one has ever adequately explained. So I'm going to say this again, you are not listening. So you're trying to run things from Washington, D.C., and you're just not listening. And that's no way to run a railroad, and we're stopping that today. It's my understanding that the next digital GI Bill release has been stalled for several months as VA takes a step back to reevaluate the schedule and revise the cost estimates because of the enrollment manager release, jobs program. That's what you're running. We must get a handle on these delays, motivate you. It's not the VA, it's you, to keep this project on track. And up to this point, it's been like pulling teeth to figure out how much money has been spent. I think we got this, last night? You guys knew this hearing was coming a long time ago. We got this sheet last night. Okay, no, junk. We need to figure out how much this is costing in a timely manner so we can make the appropriate decisions, and no one can tell us when the project's going to be final. That, again, is unacceptable. Can't even get an answer when you're going to do the next release. So we're here today to get these questions answered, and I want them answered. I don't want them, I'm going to get back to you later, and then we're going to send you a note, and my people will call you. I want the answers today, and if you're not willing or able to answer them, then you're incompetent. So I don't want to come to having to subpoena you, but we are in the majority, and I will do so because you are not serving our veterans appropriately for some reason, and I want to know what that reason is today. Now, as I said, we have a fantastic relationship together on this committee in a nonpartisan manner. And today we are going to vote at 13:30. That's 1:30 for you civilians. And so we may have to briefly recess, but if you think we're not pushing this today, you are wrong. So with that, I will yield to my friend and distinguished member of Congress, Mr. Levin, the ranking member of this subcommittee.
I thank my friend, Chairman Van Orden. Thank Chairman Rosendale as well. I'm grateful for the opportunity to work with you guys on important legislation to help our veterans. Thank Ranking Member Trifolis McCormick as well for making this happen today. In November of 2019, I went to Muskogee, Oklahoma, and I wanted to go see why it was taking so long for progress to be made on how GI Bill benefits and other information was being processed, and went and had some really good barbecue as well in Muskogee. But what I saw with regard to GI Bill technology was frankly pretty shocking. I saw systems that were being held together with 40, 50-year-old technology. COBOL was being used in one of the systems, and frankly, it was miraculous that the good people there who were, working really hard, were able to make any of it work. But even really simple things like changing an address proved extraordinarily difficult when you had multiple systems running. And seeing systems that are decades old, barely being held together, really was deeply frustrating. And I remember the conversations I had back then about the money that would be needed in order to repair things and to get things up to some semblance of modern technology. And we largely have delivered on what was asked of us in the Congress. We've come through on those requests, bipartisan as well. This was from the Trump administration, now on through to the Biden administration. So it's so important that we get this right. These processors there in Muskogee, in a converted grocery store, are responsible for distributing nearly $12 billion annually in veteran education benefits. And this dysfunction has been really hard on VA staff, but also on student veterans, on educators, on school certifying officials. I was very pleased that in March of 2021, VA awarded the contract to Accenture to support the Digital GI Bill project to create a more user-friendly platform for students and institutions enrolled in VA educational assistance programs, as well as those administering those programs. And we have to unite all these legacy systems, scores of legacy systems, bringing together activities like payments, enrollments, oversight at higher functioning levels, at any functional level, to be honest with you. It's a multi-year effort, and it's planned to take place over many increments, and I understand that that can be frustrating too, but there needs to be progress. That's the key. 1 year ago, our two subcommittees came together for an update on Accenture's work, and the takeaways were pretty positive. Improvements were being made, program increments were for the most part on schedule, and in preparation for today's hearing, we asked largely the same questions. The news is still relatively positive. This summer, VA, through Accenture, released something called Enrollment Manager, which replaced a legacy system called VA Once. This is designed to improve the user experience for school certifying officials, making it easier for them to access student records, making it easier and faster for institutions to exchange data and documents with VA. There are 6 more releases, is my understanding, planned through 2024, all designed to make the experience better for the employees and for the veterans alike. However, there is absolutely a need to review the Digital GI Bill contract and the upcoming release timelines to ensure both VA and Accenture are on the same page for the releases. Here's the deal. Congress can pass all the laws that we want to pass. If we want to truly strengthen these benefits, if we want to truly make this system work the way it's supposed to work, we've got to make sure VA has the capacity to efficiently deliver those benefits. And if we don't do that, we're just missing the point, and we're failing the veterans that we're serving and the families that we're serving. So I think we're all committed here to doing everything that we can collectively to make sure that's the case, to make sure that you guys are on track, and we're going to do all we can to hold you accountable to that. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll yield back.
Thank you, sir. I'd now like to yield to the the TM Subcommittee Chair, Mr. Rosendale. There you are. How you doing, pal? You all right?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The GI Bill is one of the most successful government programs in history. The educational benefits in the GI Bill are often credited with helping create the American middle class of the 20th century. Not only that, it's rare a government program that has consistently generated hundreds of billions of economic growth for tens of billions of dollars spent, decade after decade. Congress took big steps to enhance the program with the post-9/11 GI Bill and the Forever GI Bill. Now it's critical that we modernize how it operates with the digital GI Bill. It's hard to believe just how antiquated and complicated the information technology systems are that the VA staff use to process GI Bill applications. As we have seen many times, these IT systems are impeding service delivery to our veterans rather than improving it. The Digital GI Bill project began in 2021, and a year ago, the effort was making rapid progress. It was releasing new functionality every few months, boosting automation, and starting to phase out legacy systems. DGIB is one of the most successful examples of implementing a system as a managed service. It was also the lowest cost of all the VA's major IT modernization programs. This was an encouraging contrast to the expensive failures we've been seeing elsewhere. Unfortunately, that progress has stalled. Since the 5th DGIB release earlier this year, the VA has been stuck in an opaque process to revise its schedule and reshuffle the subsequent releases. There's still no date for the 6th release as the months slip by. And unfortunately, explanations from the VA and the contractors have been convoluted and contradictory. We're seeing everybody at this table pointing fingers at each other. That's the expectation that I have today, and that's what we're going to try to sort that spaghetti out. We have to get a digital GI Bill back on track. The most difficult and important milestones for the project are yet to come. We need to know what percentage of original claims the system will be able to automate. We also need to know whether Accenture will be able to retire the benefits delivery network. And VA and contractors still need to demonstrate whether the managed service is less expensive to operate than the hodgepodge of legacy systems. Finally, we need to know how much DGIB will ultimately cost. MITRE's initial 10-year estimate was between $1.3 and $1.9 billion. We've heard of a window, of range of costs. That is an enormous window. Getting any information about costs since then has been extremely difficult. All we know is that the cost estimate seems to be moving in the wrong direction. I'm pleased to see the digital GI Bill has accomplished more in 2 years than any other VA IT project that I have seen. But today it's stumbling, and I believe the concept remains sound, but the bureaucracy managing the project is floundering. We expect better. I want to thank our witnesses for appearing today to give veterans and taxpayers an update on this important program. I look forward to finding out some of these answers so the digital GI Bill can move forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will now yield to the ranking member of the Subcommittee on Technology and Modernization, the wonderful friend of mine, Ms. Phyllis McCormick.
Thank you, Chairman Van Orden, and thank you, Chairman Rosendale, for holding this hearing. And thank you to all our witnesses for being here today. We have a lot of ground to cover and a lot of opening comments to hear, so I'll keep my remarks short. GI Bill education benefits are a key recruiting tool for our military, especially at a time when the Department of Defense is struggling to meet its recruiting goals. It is in our nation's interest that we ensure that this benefit continues to be an incentive to military service by ensuring the program's future stability. GI Bill benefits are also crucial to easing service members' transition out of the military and into private sector jobs that support the veterans and their families upon completion of their service. While the GI Bill has been a prime example of a successful benefit program for decades, it has historically been frustratingly slow to apply for and receive. The old paper process left veterans waiting weeks and months for approval to start classes, frequently making them miss registration deadlines and postponing their start of their education. I am heartened to hear that this is improving, but it seems we still have a lot of work to do. VA's recent efforts to modernize the system used by managed education benefits have been a shining example of how IT modernization should happen. So much so, it's left us wondering why Education Services is able to do this and other parts of the VA cannot. Is there a way that we can share the lessons learned from this program with the rest of VA to improve the implementation of IT systems across the organization? It's not often that the Technology Modernization Subcommittee gets the opportunity to hear from an IT modernization program that seems to be going well, but we're starting to hear about delays with the implementation. I hope to hear today how VA plans to overcome these roadblocks and push the program forward. We cannot allow this program to go the way of other IT modernization efforts. I look forward to today's conversation, and I yield back.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll now introduce our witness panel. Our first witness is Mr. Joseph Garcia, the Executive Director of Education Services at the Department of Veterans Affairs. Mr. Garcia is accompanied by Mr. Robert, I'm going to slaughter your name, sir, please.
Orifice.
Orifice?
Orifice.
Orifice, okay.
Yes.
Orifice, got it, check. I want to pay you the appropriate amount of respect by pronouncing your name properly, Mr. Orifice. The Benefits and Memorial Service Portfolio Director. Our second witness is Mr. Troy Mueller, Senior Advisor and Department Head at MITRE, and is accompanied by Mr. Dave Powner, Center for Data-Driven Policy at the same company. Our third witness is Mr. Kyle Mitchell. Michael?
I'm Michael, sir.
Okay, this is not working out today. I apologize, man. I was much better at this, Mr. Michael, because we met the other day. Digital DI, Bill, Senior Delivery and Chief Innovation Officer at Accenture Federal Services. Please stand and raise your right hands. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Very well. Thank you, and let the record reflect that the witnesses have answered in the affirmative. Mr. Garcia, you are now recognized for 5 minutes. Just to be super clear, I mean, some of you had been here before. That clock is 5 minutes. That's exactly as long as you'll be talking. And it's the same thing up here. So you are now recognized for 5 minutes to deliver your testimony on behalf of the Department of Veterans Affairs.
Good afternoon, Chairman Van Orden, Chairman Rosendale, Ranking Members Levin, Sheriff Liz McCormick, and other members of the subcommittees. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss the Digital GI Bill program and the continued system improvements and upgrades. Joining me today is Robert Orifice from VA's Office of Information and Technology. To ensure VA effectively serves veterans and their families seeking to use their GI Bill benefits, VA is modernizing the GI Bill's IT platform to deliver benefits faster and enhance customer experience. On March 11, 2021, VA awarded a managed service contract to Accenture Federal Services to develop the DGIB. This enterprise service platform gives GI Bill students the ability to engage with VA and their earned benefits through electronic outreach, intake, and enhanced communication tools. Since inception, VA has deployed numerous major releases. In just 6 months, VA marked its first major milestone by deploying the processing of post-9/11 GI Bill claims into the managed service. The managed service allows for agile decision-making in a single managed platform that grows as VA needs and responds to changes in technology through continuous end-to-end updates. For the first time since the inception of the GI Bill program, applicants will receive a same-day education benefits eligibility decision. DGIB now provides veterans the ability to download and view digital copies of their certificate of eligibility, no longer waiting up for 5 days for a paper copy. We contacted the first veteran who used the automated system. This veteran expressed that she appreciates the efforts VA has made to ease the process for veterans. She told friends who were getting out how easy the process was to apply for the post-9/11 GI Bill and encouraged them to apply for classes. She hopes that more veterans will utilize this benefit in the future. Her thoughts validate the goal of the Digital GI Bill program. Better support for veterans pursuing their educational goals, modernize the tools for them, and those that support the veterans. The most recent major release in March 2023, VA deployed Enrollment Manager to help school certifying officials, SCOs, submit enrollments faster. In only 4 months, VA surpassed 1.4 million enrollment certifications. Over 15,000 SCOs from over 11,000 institutions are now using Enrollment Manager. One school certifying official shared with me personally that Enrollment Manager does not have the same constraints as a legacy system. Before, an SCO had to wait a day to make changes to a certification to make sure certification did not get processed out of order. But now SCOs can finish a task in a couple of minutes that previously would have taken multiple days. Enrollment Manager speeds up the certification process, which in turn allows SCOs to have more time with their veteran students. Implementing a managed service and improving automation involves integrating numerous complex IT systems and decommissioning decades-old legacy systems. VA acknowledges several challenges during this transition, such as the March 2023 issue with monthly housing allowance payments. Although electronic funds transfer payments were received on the same day, there were lessons learned and lessons applied, including enhanced monitoring and reporting. We also started a managed services assessment to develop a comprehensive risk matrix to ensure mitigation needs and promote best practices across the business lines. VA is committed to ensuring the continuous improvement of the DGIB program, as well as effective stewardship of taxpayer resources. VA is working with AFS on a bilateral modification to the current contract to meet emerging requirements, clarify testing capabilities, and to add additional integrations to other VA systems. Chairman and ranking members, VA has made tremendous strides in the administration of education benefits and appreciates support of Congress as we work through the challenges and continue our efforts to modernize educational assistance programs. This concludes my testimony. My colleague and I look forward to answering any questions the committee may have.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. The written statement of Mr. Garcia will be entered in the hearing record. Mr. Mueller, you're now recognized for 5 minutes to deliver your testimony.
Chairman Van Orden, Rosendale, Ranking Members Sherfless, McCormick, and Levin, and other members of the subcommittees, thank you for the opportunity to testify before you today on the Department of Veterans Affairs Digital GI Bill program. Successful modernization of IT is critical to improving the veteran experience. MITRE very much appreciates the opportunity to share our insights on this work. MITRE is a not-for-profit corporation chartered to operate in the public interest, which includes operating 6 federally funded research and development centers, or FFRDCs. The Center for Enterprise Modernization, where I am a department head, was established in 1998 by the Department of Treasury and is now jointly sponsored by the Department of Veterans Affairs, Commerce, and the Social Security Administration. My department is responsible for supporting the modernization of benefits and service delivery across all VBA lines of business. As an Air Force veteran, I know firsthand that serving in the military opens the door to many benefits, including the life-changing opportunity to access higher education. Education benefits span those entering the service through officer training programs, tuition assistance, and fully funded degree programs while on active duty, and the GI Bill and other education programs for veterans and their families. I myself have benefited from each of these programs. I received an Air Force ROTC scholarship for college. I completed my master's under tuition assistance and was able to earn a doctorate utilizing the post-9/11 GI Bill. If not for these benefits, I would not be here before you today. Supporting the VA, it's not merely an assignment or a job. It's personal. It's my way of giving back for the things I've received. MITRE has been a partner with Education Service since 2008, supporting the implementation of the post-9/11 GI Bill, and again in 2019 to chart the path forward for modernizing claims processing and customer service. MITRE is currently working with the Program Management Office in the areas of systems engineering, program integration, lifecycle cost estimating, and organizational change. Over the past 3+ years, the program has had many accomplishments delivering major releases of capability. Additionally, the VA has demonstrated gains in maturity regarding program governance, execution, and decision-making, as demonstrated by their taking action on recommendations of the 28 independent technical assessment of the Comary Act implementation. Programs of this size and complexity intended to modernize an environment of multiple legacy systems with numerous dependencies and an enterprise that includes parallel modernization efforts are never without risk. VBA, to its credit, is currently conducting a strategic review of this program as part of an effort to identify and evaluate opportunities to improve delivery of benefits and services. The outcome of the review will position the VA to maintain a rhythm of capability delivery while ensuring good stewardship of taxpayer dollars. Recognizing that there will always be challenges, complexity, and risk, I have 2 recommendations to share with you today. The first is to encourage the VA to continue to mature its contracting and program management capabilities and ensure proper allocation and alignment of resources with demonstrated knowledge, skills, and experience to appropriate programs and projects. A contracting officer with extensive experience procuring commodities is not the same as one who's worked on led development and execution of exquisite acquisition strategies for large, complex transformational programs. The same can be said of program managers. Both are scarce resources that require agencies to be deliberate about career development and assignments. The second recommendation is for the House Committee on Veterans Affairs and Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs to continue the direct monthly engagement of their staff with Education Service. The meeting, which started during the Comary Act implementation, has become a critical part of the battle rhythm of the program, just as important as program increment planning sessions or governance meetings. From our vantage point, these monthly engagements promote transparency, provide the opportunity for dialogue, and contribute to the momentum of risk and issue identification, mitigation, and decision-making on the program. In closing, let me just note that MITRE's roughly 10,000 personnel, over 1,600 are veterans. There are few duties that our employees consider more noble and consequential than honoring, through our support to the VA, the service and sacrifice of our nation's men and women in uniform. On behalf of the entire MITRE team, I greatly appreciate the opportunity to come before you today and look forward to your questions.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mueller's written testimony will now be entered into the record. Mr. Michael, I now recognize you for 5 minutes.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, Chairman Van Orden, Chairman Rosendale, Ranking Member Levin, Ranking Member Sheffield McCormick, and members of the subcommittees on economic and technology modernization. Thank you for inviting me to testify about our efforts in service of VA's digital GI Bill delivery program. I'm Kyle Michael, the Senior Delivery Lead for the program and the Chief Innovation Officer at Accenture Federal Services. Accenture Federal has a long-standing partnership with the VA on programs that deliver meaningful outcomes for beneficiaries, including veterans, service members, and their families. Since March 2021, Accenture Federal has been working with the VA to streamline educational claims processing by creating simple, efficient digital experiences to help veterans and their families complete their educational journeys. I'd like to share with you a few examples of how the program is serving veterans. Through continuous delivery of meaningful outcomes, VA and Accenture Federal have delivered major releases as well as a number of smaller agile releases to our platform. These releases are aimed at driving automation and improving time to receipt of benefits. Together, VA and Accenture Federal have made significant strides in areas including user experience, service enhancements, program insights, and processing efficiencies. A number of the release highlights include providing intuitive user experiences and rapid decisions for eligible first-time beneficiaries. We delivered new, intuitive designs and updated functions for beneficiaries applying for post-9/11 GI Bill benefits. Improvements such as pre-filled service history function make applications for post-9/11 GI benefit bills easier. We've reduced eligibility processing from 30 days down to a matter of minutes and provided the ability to retrieve digital copies of decision letters. The GI Bill has been assisting veterans for nearly 79 years, but now through automation, we're helping applicants start their educational journeys faster than ever. We're also providing schools modernized claims capabilities. School certifying officials, or SCOs, are the front door for veterans to continue and complete their educational goals. To better serve the SCOs, we introduced Enrollment Manager, which streamlines the process to submit enrollments for students. More than 15,000 SCOs have accessed Enrollment Manager since launch, and the new system has reduced the number of steps to enter in a new enrollment to as few as 5 clicks. Already, more than 1.4 million enrollments have been submitted. Most importantly, SCOs now have more time to focus on what matters most, helping veterans, service members, and their families meet and exceed their educational goals. And lastly, modernizing legacy systems. With streamlined VA processes and our new technology platform, we've achieved a 99.99% system availability rate for claims processing. We are also helping VA decommission antiquated legacy IT systems to improve the speed and accuracy of its educational claims processes. We've retired 2 of the 3 legacy systems and have exceeded DGBI's 3-year IT infrastructure reduction targets. Now, large complex programs have numerous dependencies, both within and external to the program. Recognizing this, VA and Accenture Federal have established governance processes to quickly identify risks and assess impacts. Together, VA and Accenture Federal have continued to make progress on DGIB milestones while jointly working through options to address gaps in dependencies. We are actively engaged with VA to replan future releases and to outline potential options for a path forward while continuing to fulfill program commitments. Our partnership with VA can continue to provide world-class modernized services to veteran beneficiaries. We can do this by deploying future capabilities like Approval Manager, Workload Manager, and Benefits Manager, which will replace aging legacy systems with modern technologies and digital experiences. In conclusion, we remain steadfast in our commitment to make a dramatic difference in the lives of hundreds of thousands of veterans, service members, and their families. Through the use of innovative technologies, we are strengthening the foundation that provides agile, rapid deployments, improved automation, and enhanced data insight. We are proud to help the VA bring to life its truly bold DGIB vision and to focus on delivering the best outcomes for veterans and for the American taxpayer. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Mr. Michael, thank you very much for your testimony. Your written statement will be now entered into the record. The subcommittee will now recess so that the members can go vote. And we expect to return 10 minutes following the last vote. And Mr. Garcia, I recommend that you bring a lunch. Okay? Ready? Ready. Subcommittee will come to order. We're going to proceed to questions, and I'm going to ask members and witnesses to respect the 5-minute rule. We talked about that earlier, so I'm not asking anymore, I'm telling you. And I will hold myself accountable to the same timeline. Can I have my... I now recognize myself for 5 minutes. Clock has started. Mr. Garcia, can you give us a date when the digital GI Bill project will resume and when the release 6 is scheduled?
Yes, sir. Thank you for that question. So we are going through a contract modification with AFS.
Mr. Garcia, I'm going to be short with you.
Yes, sir.
And I expect you to be short with me. I asked you for a date, not a process. So you've got this thing, it's called a calendar, and I want you to be able to put your finger on it and tell me a date. Can you do that?
Sir, yes, the release 6 is in power. That's the next major release. That's the financial system update within BDN.
Mr. Garcia, that is a process, not a date. I'm asking you a very clear question. What date? Put your finger on a calendar and let's stop this buffoonery.
Summer of 24 for release 6.
Okay? That is a season, not a date, Mr. Garcia. What is the date that this will be released?
I can't give you a date beyond that.
Okay? That is unacceptable. Mr. Garcia, do you read the newspaper? Do you read the newspaper?
Yes, sir, every day.
Okay. Do you remember that article that came out that said Visa went out of business? No, because you didn't read it, because it didn't happen. It didn't happen because Visa is a company and it is predicated on merit. So if Visa all of a sudden couldn't process over 200,000 of their bills, and then eventually, 4,000 at some point? What would happen to the person that was responsible at Visa in about, 6 minutes? What would happen to that person, Mr. Garcia? Could you posit it? They would be fired. They would be kicked to the curb because they weren't serving their customers. And you use that word when you're speaking about my fellow veterans. You call them customers. So the person at Visa, if they failed objectively, like you have, because it's not the VA, man, you're the VA. It says it right there. If they failed like that, they would be fired. Why are you still getting a paycheck? Can you answer that question, Mr. Garcia? Should you be held to the same standard as a civilian company that is processing things that you buy at Walmart when you're talking about the lives of veterans? I've gone through every single education program that you have, Mr. Mueller. All of them. So you, Mr. Garcia, need to justify to us why you are getting a paycheck. Can you do that, sir?
Yes, sir, I'd like to do that.
Hit it. You got, I'm going to give you 50 seconds. I want 1 minute to close. Hit it. You're on.
Sir, I started on 1 August of 2022.
Okay?
VRAP, right, was at 54% obligation in August of 22. Through my efforts, Mr. Levin can recognize this. By December, when the program ended, it was at 99%. I don't call that failure, sir. I call that supporting the veterans. If I was a student veteran, I wouldn't be here with the GI Bill. 8 years enlisted time, got out, finished my program using the GI Bill. Customers are important to me. Higher ed, I was in higher 10 years before I came to this position. I know SCOs, sir. I listened to them. The successful rollout enrollment manager, because I put a priority on it. I know the SCOs. They used to work for me. I listened to them, as I listened to veterans as well.
Very well. Thank you. Mr. Garcia, here's the problem. Are you confident, Mr. Garcia, can you please tell me again what percentage of original claims you have automated last month?
Sir, it varies by date.
Percentage of claims you have automated last month. Can you answer that question, sir?
In the 15 to 20% range, because it varies by day.
okay? That's a 20% variance, and that's unacceptable, Mr. Garcia. So you have to understand that the reason that these things aren't working is because we have the VA, which is a group and agency, and we have processes. We don't have people. That doesn't fly. Mr. Garcia, I'm holding you personally accountable for this. Personally accountable for this. And I want to say one more thing, and my time has expired. I'll get you in the second round. I yield back, and I now recognize the Ranking Member, Mr. Levin, for 5 minutes.
Thank the chairman, and I'd like to associate myself with the chairman's request for specific timeline. And in fact, in my open, I had mentioned, I think, 6 additional releases. So I see in the majority's timeline here, release 6, 7, 8, 9. I think there's a 10, 11, and a 12. It would be very helpful to us, and I appreciate all the work, obviously, that you're doing, but it would be very helpful to us to be able to put specific dates against those releases, and then to be able to measure over time and make sure that those dates are being hit. Wanted to follow up also on the chairman's question about automation, and in your testimony I saw current percentage of 57.38. How do you explain that it's not higher than that after the time that you've had? Why, and how are we going to get from 57.38 to 70, 80, 90? What do you need to make that happen?
Sir, when the program started, we were at around the 35, 37% range. So we are pushing 60%, so that's an increase of 25%. One of the things that we're working on, for example, is with DOD on the system called Vader. It's what comes over from the Pentagon into our system. And we've been having good progress meetings lately over the last several months to make sure those payments, that information that comes over is accurate. We don't want to put in an automated system inaccurate information that creates inaccurate payments, right? So the off-ramping that occurs from automation is when the data is not accurate coming in. So we're making progress with DOD.
I appreciate that. Unfortunately, we have limited time. Can I get your commitment that you will give us a date certain, or at least an estimated date certain, of when we can get to, hit 70, 80, 90, 100%? Can you give us that table?
So we progress.
That's pretty simple, yes or no.
We're committed to higher automation and originals and supplementals, yes, sir.
So you can't give us a specific timetable on when you're going to be able to hit those higher numbers?
Sir, it depends on the off-ramping.
Okay. Can you give us a specific timeline that fills in some of the blanks of this chart when you're going to hit release 6, 7, 8, 9, and so forth?
Sir, it does depend on the contract modification. We got to get through that, and that in turn would set the new schedule. But we can say release 6 is in the summer time frame.
So I'm trying to work with you here. I think it would be very helpful to everybody on this committee if you would at least commit to giving us some specifics with regard to dates and times as it pertains to releases and as it pertains to the automation framework. Can you commit to that?
In the best that I can, sir.
Okay, well, our staff will be following up with yours, but I think it really would be helpful for us to understand how these investments are being implemented and how these metrics are being achieved.
Yes, sir.
In March, hundreds of thousands of veterans were at risk of not receiving their housing payments due to a processing failure tied to Digital GI Bill Release 5. Mr. Garcia, I'll start with you, and I want to give time for Mr. Michael as well. What steps are you now taking in light of that failure to ensure that future releases don't cause similar unforeseen errors?
Yes, sir. There was a dependency that was created for the BDN system to be online, and the system did not catch the dependency when that occurred. The system just froze. The payment queue did not go forward. We immediately responded to that. Payments did go out for 278,000 EFT recipients. 4,000 paper checks went out the next day. We fixed that problem with AFS. We now have robust monitoring that occurs every month. I get daily inputs that last week that tracks across the cycles, payment queue, payment run, and we have full confidence that that won't happen again.
That's good to hear. Mr. Michael, anything you'd like to add?
I would say we certainly recognize that there was an issue there and worked together quickly to make sure that we got payments out that very same day and payments out overall in the time frame which typically go out. And with regards to making sure that this doesn't occur in the future, we have certainly put a number of processes in place to look at functional counts and share that with a broader stakeholder community to make sure that we have full and complete visibility to any issues that may occur and make sure that we have the opportunity to address the issues as they arise.
I appreciate that, and that's certainly all on the record now, so we're going to hold you to it. And again, as I said at the outset, I think there were so many problems with GI Bill technology, and it's encouraging to hear of your progress, but help us say nice things about your work by providing us with specifics, specific dates, specific progress that you're making, and I think that'd go a long way, and I'll yield back.
Thank you, Ranking Member Levin. I now recognize Mr. Mervan from Indiana for 5 minutes, sir.
Mr. Garcia, considering the VA's history of budget overruns in IT projects, what concrete actions are being taken to prevent excessive spending and ensure that the digital GI Bill modernization efforts stay within budget?
Sir, I would say 2 quick points. The governance structure that we have has become more robust over time. We have the right leadership in place for the Executive Steering Committee, for example. On a day-to-day basis, we have program governance that I help lead with my partners at this table. So governance has been improved. We're also standing up or increasing the project management office that works directly for me. It's been in place, but we're adding more FTEs and more capability to it, partnering with MITRE at the table as well. So I think improved governance and the PMO office that helps with that program oversight, including the budget part of it, is how we're doing that.
One of the pieces of legislation that I have proposed is an acquisition review board that would allow for the ability to look at projects as they are being enacted, as they are being instituted. What is your opinion of that?
So what was the term called again?
It's an acquisition review board.
Oh, the ERB.
Yep.
Sir, I think that's a good idea if it adds to governance. I defer to some of my partners to maybe add to that as well.
We can stop there. I just wanted to know what your opinion was. With that, I'll yield back.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it greatly, and I recognize Ms. Sherfilis Ramirez, or McCormick, sorry. Oh, my gosh. I was thinking, you will, I'm sorry. McCormick for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. This question is for Mr. Orifisi. I hope I got that right. For the most part, modernization of the digital GI Bill system has been seamless and has avoided the pitfalls that VA's other IT modernization efforts have faced. What are some of the lessons learned from these efforts?
So thank you for that question, Ranking Member. I've actually come up in the education programs on the IT side through some of the failures and the successes that we're having here. And so I've gotten to experience many of the aspects of the failed IT and the successful programs. We've had a very collaborative environment between Education Service and OIT and our vendors that lets us communicate very regularly in terms of what work needs to be done, what the risks and issues are, and really be able to collaborate closely in terms of what progress needs to be made and what actions need to be taken. And I think a large part of the success in the education space has been that close collaboration between the business, IT, and the vendors to make things successful.
And how can the VA transfer best practices and lessons learned from the modernization effort and duplicate success in other VA programs?
Also a very good question. I am now in a larger role than I have been previously going through this, and we are looking at the lessons learned and how we've done and been able to achieve the successes within this program, and looking to see what we can then apply to the other areas within the benefits portfolio. We are also work very closely with our CIO on a regular basis with this program, and he has very close oversight of what we're doing here to apply those lessons more broadly across OIT.
The committee has heard from numerous witnesses on the issues and incompatibilities between VA and DoD systems. What are the largest challenges in integrating DoD and VA systems?
So I will start that question, then I will turn that over to Joe. So one of the challenges that we have is that there's very specific qualities around especially training data and around some of the collection of data from all the branches of service as we look to automate the claims process. And as we get into the collection of this data and making sure that we're having the quality data there, we've had to work with the data groups on the DoD side, and they've been very collaborative with us in correcting and working with us to bring this data across. But it's really been making sure that we collect all the data that's needed to be able to disqualify training periods and other type of information like that to make sure that those claims move forward. And Mr. Garcia.
Ma'am, that again is a very good question because the data comes over from DoD and it enters our system. So we've had great progress working with our partners. We had a meeting with them where we specifically identified the quick wins that we could get. A lot of it is Guard Reserve time, service academies, how they have their obligations set up. So we were very clear on what we needed, and our counterpart is working with the services to make sure that we get that information that we need. So I'm very pleased with the progress that we're making and will continue to make with our DoD partners.
Thank you. Well, that takes me to my question for you, Mr. Garcia. As with any technology modernization program, I remain concerned regarding potential vendor lock. The prime contractor, Accenture, indicated that it's used several proprietary technologies in a system which may hamper VA's ability to modify, upkeep, and enhance systems. Is this concern of VA?
Proprietary.
Please suspend the gentlelady's time until you guys get your act together.
I'm sorry, sir. He has the hearing aid is not working for him, so he has a hard time hearing the questions.
That is a very reasonable excuse.
So is this IP?
Are you prepared to answer the
I'm
question?
concerned about the vendor lock and the IP. Yeah, IP.
Intellectual property?
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, ma'am. So we are working on the intellectual property. Is that the question, ma'am?
On the vendor lock.
Yes, we're working to include that in the modification of the contract.
And what steps are you taking?
Yeah, so Mr. Del Bene is very concerned about the intellectual property and how this moves forward. And so part of the negotiations that we're entering with the vendor is how we handle the transition of IP into the VA to ensure that we minimize any impact of vendor lock around the intellectual property and the proprietary software.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you, madam. I now recognize Ms. Ramirez from Illinois for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Van Orden, Chairman Rosendale, Ranking Member Levin, and Ranking Member Sharfelis McCormick for holding today's hearing and reviewing this digital bill program, GI bill program. As you may know, you've probably heard me talk before about a bill that I introduced here in Congress, HR 1767. It's the Student Veteran Benefit Restoration Act. This bill, in essence, would restore GI Bill benefits to student veterans who've been defrauded by educational institutions. So as you can imagine, ensuring that the technological upgrades to the system used to administer the GI Bill benefits is really important to me. I want to make sure it works. So this question is for Mr. Garcia. What steps is the VA and relevant departments taking to ensure that when HR 1767, because I'm being positive about it being signed into law, what steps are you taking in the enrollment manager platform to make sure we have the capacity to handle a possible influx in claims?
Yes, ma'am. So part of the efforts that we do is legislative changes that we need to do. We have a office within Education Service that actually works on that to make sure that we take that new legislation, work with our partners to make sure that's integrated into, for example, the digital JLB platform moving forward. So that's important that we do.
Got it. And I just want to reiterate, I think you heard it from Chairman Van Orden, you heard it from Ranking Member Levin. I think we all want to see a timeline that we're going to be able to count on in this 5th iteration of the modernization of the program. It is critical to all of us. So I want to just make sure I say that on record. I have just a few more questions for you, and then I'm going to yield back. Does the VA plan to request increased funding to the Office of Information and Technology for Educational Services? Yes or no?
that OIT funding, so Robert, can you answer that?
At this time, we do not plan to ask for additional funding for OIT for this program, and that will be that may change based off any negotiations with the vendor.
Got it. And can the VA say that there will be no processing delays in the future as we wrap up what will be maybe the 5th iteration?
Yes, ma'am, we don't want any more delays.
So again, I want to reiterate what you've heard here today. We know that you're working really hard, and we want to make sure that we have the systems in place to ensure that, above all, we're centering everything we do on our veterans and making sure that they have the resources they need, they're able to process their benefits as soon as possible, and that we don't look back and repeat the same thing we've seen in the past. So I'm going to take your word that you're doing everything in your hands to ensure that that summer 2024 date comes to a concrete date, and that we could all be celebrating we're moving forward and we have progress. So thank you, and with that, I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Ramirez, and I recognize Mr. Self from the great state of Texas for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Mueller, I heard you say earlier about the noble work. VA does noble work. We're not here today to question the nobleness of your work. We're here to see if we can make it more efficient. Mr. Garcia, you have a very impressive resume, 28 years in the Air Force. You assumed leadership just over a year ago, and you've written on leadership, you've taught leadership, and you assumed the leadership of this program almost a year ago. Is that right?
August 1st, yes, sir.
August 1st.
Going on a year.
Going on a year, very close to it. And since you took the leadership of this program, we've come up with this delay. First question is, to what do you attribute the delay? I may have missed it while I was out on the floor, but the bottom line, if you will.
Yes, sir, that's a very good question. Sir, part of the delay is getting it right? We want to make sure, we want to build on the success that I've heard people recognize, do right for our veterans and be good stewards, right? The delay, sir, I think comes down to new information that we got about the runway that we now have. So BDN shut down the Benefit Delivery Network system, was originally going to shut down, be unavailable September of this year. That compressed the time schedule, right? And so now we know it's an extra 2 years of runway. We were able to use that runway to move enrollment manager, for example, for the school certifying official. That's been a great program, 1.4 million enrollment certifications. It's been a much better program because we moved it to the right. That's an example of how we are trying to make sure we take advantage of the agile capacity with additional runway.
So you talked about it compressed the timeline, and yet then you have a longer runway. I'm not sure I understand that, and we don't need to go into it. Once you identified the delay, how often do you personally, because we're talking about at least $1 billion program here over the decade, at least $1 billion program, how often do you personally chair meetings to make sure this moves as fast as it can? You personally.
Sir, Digital Jet Bill is the highest priority for me. It takes up every part of my day. In the governance structure, we have meetings with our partners twice a week. I have their cell phone number. I talk to them nighttime, weekends to make sure this program is moving forward. We set up a project modernization office, PMO, in my office, working directly for me now. That's a change that I made. It wasn't working for me before. The PMO works for me. I talk to that person daily. So it's a daily effort to move this modernization forward.
Okay, and have you had this large of a project management project before?
I've been involved with projects like this, sir. After I retired to work for a consulting firm, the Pentagon had some modernization projects. I didn't lead them, and I was part of them.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and what are you going to do? Congress is concerned about the length of time. I don't accept these delays face value. What are you doing to compress the time, to use your expression?
Yes, sir.
Do you just accept your contractors' statement that it's going to take that long? Because leadership, in and of its essence, is to get the most out of the people under you.
Yes, sir, I agree, and I do that for our staff, and I work collaboratively with our vendors to move the program forward, and so I commit to continue doing that.
Do you see any possibility to compress the timeline, to use your phrase?
We want to make sure we do it right, sir. There's a lot of testing that needs to occur. We don't want to be too fast and we want to make sure that the veterans get their benefits, again, as I got when I was a veteran, that the payments are accurate, for example. So we don't want to speed so much that we get it wrong. So I think we should be deliberate to make sure these major releases that come forward are done right.
Are your contractors working 24/7 on this?
I call them at all hours of the day and night.
The testing, and this may be for one of you other gentlemen, is the testing occurring, because this is an IT system, is the testing occurring 24/7?
I think that's right. As we go through test cycles, we have different phases.
Gentlemen's time has expired. We are going to move to a second round of questioning, but before we do so, Mr. Garcia, is your hearing augment, is your device working? Okay, I would like to take a brief recess now if you want to work on that, because I really want you to be able to hear what we're saying. Is that all right? All right, we'll take a brief recess. Mr. Garcia, just give you a heads up.
until he gets. Test, test, test. Test. A little better?
Mr. Garcia, you good to go?
Sir, I hope so. I apologize for this.
Mr. Garcia, that technology was issued to you by this committee, and that is not your fault, that is ours, and that will not happen again. So I'm going to knock you when you're not doing good stuff, and we're going to knock us when we don't do good stuff either. So what's good for the goose is good for the gander. We will proceed now to a second round of questioning. I recognize myself for 5 minutes. Mr. Garcia, previous to this committee hearing, when you guys were informed, I said this earlier, you were informed over a month ago that you were going to come here and sit here. And we didn't get data, this stuff, from you until last night. So 28 years in the Air Force, did a bunch of other stuff. Were you an officer or an enlisted guy? Were you an officer or an enlisted?
Both 8 years enlisted, 20 years commission.
Okay. What pay grade were you as an enlisted guy? What did you get up to?
E5 after 8 years, and then I got out, became a lieutenant colonel after 20.
And you went bad. Just kidding. I'm an enlisted guy. Hey, okay, so when you were a lieutenant colonel, if you told your lieutenant or whatever, hey man, we're gonna get together a month from now, and I want you to have pretty much every pertinent document you could think to make sure that your lieutenant will be able to inform me what's going on. And the lieutenant that worked for you, Lieutenant Colonel Garcia, waited until the night before to give you preparatory material. What type of conversation would you have with that lieutenant, Mr. Garcia?
In fairness, I normally try and ask what was the situation that led to that first.
Okay, Mr. Garcia, what is the situation that led to the fact that you guys couldn't give us the pertinent documents that are super duper important for us to find out until 12 hours before a hearing when you were informed 5 weeks ago?
Sir, I'm not sure what document you're referring to.
Well, this thing with all the budget and how much money you spent and everything. The $377,508,587.47, which is approximately 20% of the $1.3 to $1.96 billion you'll be expending of taxpayers' dollars for something that may or may not work.
Sir, if that got to you late, then that's my responsibility. I do accept that.
Thank you very much. So these guys came into my office. We talked about this stuff ahead of time. To the knowledge of this committee, your group of folks that work for you have never reached out to this committee staff. I know you have certainly not reached out to my office to discuss any of these things previously, so we could have taken care of some of this and moved the ball forward. So to me, it seems that if the vendor, which these guys are, proactively reach out to my office because they know I'm the chairman of the subcommittee and they want to talk through some things in detail because I only give myself 5 minutes to talk and you haven't done it, that's telling me that they're trying and you're not. And that is a factual statement. So I'd like to see you more engaged in this program. My colleague who had to step back to the floor, Mr. Self, is a retired Special Forces colonel. And these things don't fly with us. They don't. So if you're responsible, Mr. Garcia, you are responsible. Mr. Michael, what is included in the next phase of this project? And is the code actually written for the project already? And how long has it been ready, if it is? And what do you think the holdup is to implement this? So is the code written? If it is, right? How long has it been written? And then what's the holdup for getting it going?
Thank you for the question, sir. So the majority of the capabilities for Release 6 are written. The next phases will be to test that and then ultimately to deploy that. There are some additional requirements that will likely require development, so there will be some additional code. So that's why I said the majority, sir.
Okay, and when did the majority of this get written? When was it finished so that you could start your testing phase?
It was finished in the early spring, sir.
Of this year?
Yes, sir.
What's the holdup?
There are a number of dependencies to enable testing. Some of that includes the environments that are necessary for that. So in order to test an application of this type with the complex data,
Has anybody said, go? Has anyone like, go, Mr. Michael, run free? Have they done that?
no, sir, but we
Okay,
certainly
then
continue to make
whoa, whoa, whoa,
progress.
Hold on, I got 35 seconds. So, Mr. Michael, who is the person that says go? Launch, execute, proceed, sir. Who should be saying, a person, who should be saying that to you? Not an environment or process, blah, blah, blah. Who has to say, hit it, Kyle?
We get approval from Mr. Garcia to move forward with testing.
So we are waiting for Mr. Garcia to tell you to launch something that is already written and paid for. And Mr. Garcia has not told you that yet. Is that correct?
We've certainly had discussions about what's in front of us.
Yes, yes or no answer.
So there's a lot of complexity.
My time has expired. The answer is no. I now yield back, and I recognize Ranking Member Mr. Levin for 5 minutes.
Thank the chairman again. Wanted to relay some questions from students. These are actual questions from students. So hopefully that will yield your attention. One of these questions was, do all school certifying officials have access to enrollment manager, or have there been any issues preventing access? And Mr. Garcia, you seem to be on the hot spot today, so I'll go with you.
Yes, sir. Over 15,000 have access to enrollment manager, and those that could not, we try to get, we got in the system. There might have been some ID.me credential issues, but we believe that they are in, that need to get in.
And so there aren't, to your knowledge, there aren't any issues preventing access at this time?
Not that I'm aware of, sirs.
Okay, we'll follow up. We also heard that the enrollment manager might not have the best accessibility for those who are visually impaired. Can you commit to look into that and fix any issues with regard to accessibility?
Yes, sir, we can look into that.
Thank you. And specifically, we're hearing about the inability to, increase the font size and things like that. I'm sure there'll be plenty of follow-up for that. And then third, what is the downtime when enrollment manager shuts down during the typical duty day?
Sir, I'll defer to my OIT person on that, please.
And I'm not aware of downtime for enrollment manager during the daytime, and I would defer to Accenture if there's any additional metrics around downtime for enrollment manager.
I'm not aware of specific downtime associated with enrollment manager. There are certain processes that depend on systems downstream that might be delayed, but that should be not apparent to the user.
Okay, if we get you in touch with that specific person who had the question, can you commit to addressing their concern about this?
Yes, be happy to look into it, sir.
Terrific. I appreciate that. No further questions, and I'll yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Levin. I appreciate it greatly. I now recognize Mr. Rosendale from the great state. Where are you from anyway? I'm just kidding. Montana.
Montana.
I know you're from Montana. It's good to have you here.
The Treasure State.
It is the treasure state. Mr. Rosendale?
Thank you all for your patience. Obviously, we all have a lot of things going on. There's business on the floor today I had to participate in, so I'm glad to be back. Thank you very much. This is important work. If the next release happens next summer, next rollout, that represents a one-year delay in what we've been doing here. Mr. Garcia, we're 2 years into the GGIB program. It's produced significant accomplishments, as I referenced in my opening remarks, but the current struggles are frustrating and baffling. So let's get right down to the root cause of this. What caused the next release to change and to be delayed?
Sir, the next release, Release 6, is Empowered. That's the financial system that is on the schedule. We do need, as Mr. Michael said, the test environment properly to get that properly tested, make sure it's done right. We have that coming, and so that influenced when that could roll out. But I would commit to the early summer time frame for that next major release of Empower, which is the financial system upgrade.
So, Mr. Michael, let me ask you, what are you waiting for? We just heard that Mr. Garcia has to give you the authority to move forward. So what do you need in order to do your next rollout?
In order to complete the next rollout, we need to have the availability of the test environment that Mr. Garcia just mentioned. We need to have clarity on what requirements are in that release. There's a few additional items to be clarified, and we need to have contractual path to enable that.
Okay. So, Mr. Garcia, Who do you need to get that information from, and why is it taking so long to get it?
So we put a team together, acquisitions, OIT, in-house and VBA, to figure the best course of action. We have that final decision made. Now we're moving out. Next 30 days, we're going to develop the terms, 30 days to negotiate, and hopefully by early, mid-September, we'll have a contract modified with AFS to continue progressing with the next major release.
So are you saying that there's another contractor involved, or are you going to be negotiating back with Accenture?
Accenture.
Okay, but if you're providing the information, why are you not able to get the information that they need? Where is that coming from in order to authorize them to continue their work?
Well, we need to modify the contract, right? Because then we need to set the priorities, do the deliverables. There's things we want to do with that modified contract that's necessary to trigger the next steps.
Do you have the information that's necessary to deliver that to Mr. Michael right now, Accenture right now, so that you could proceed with this work?
So I believe most of the requirements are done.
So why is it that if you have the information available to you, that you're telling me it's going to take you a year to negotiate a contract and be able to authorize Mr. Michael to do this work?
No, sir, I didn't say it would take a year. I'm saying by September, we'll have the modified contract in place for them to continue with Release 6. They can't do it in 2-3 months.
And Mr. Michael, if you get the authorization in September to proceed with version 6 rollout, are you saying then it's going to take you until next summer to roll it out? Because of the information I have is it's going to be till next summer. So unless somebody said something in the room while I was gone.
Yes, sir. Certainly depends on the final outcomes, but that's a reasonable time frame, given what we know today.
Mr. Michael, how much of the software in the next release is already completed and what's left to do?
The majority is complete.
Okay. So if the majority of the software is completed, I must be missing something. If the majority of the software is completed, you have the information that's available to you, and you just need to finish up a contract, I don't understand why we're talking about next year before this can be rolled out. Somebody please enlighten me. Mr. Michael.
So when we look at the deployments for the system, there's a small number of windows across the year where we can deploy. If you think about enrollment manager, we want to make sure we're not deploying things during a time of high enrollment,
Okay.
et cetera. So there's approximately 14 out of 52 weeks of the year that we can deploy. So you take that into consideration. There's also a need to go and test thoroughly, as you heard Mr. Garcia say, and those test cycles are months long. They take a substantial amount of time to make sure that we get this right. So you add those together, along with the time to move forward on potentially new requirements. That's where the summer of 2024 comes.
Okay, so if we have the information available, you have the software that's available, you have to have a little bit of time to go ahead and test it, 30 days to test your software out. You say the software is just about complete, and then we're looking at it, we're trying to find a window of time when we don't have a large enrollment, then that would be December, January. You're not having enrollment time. It would seem to me that that would be when we could roll this out. Mr. Chair, I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now recognize Ms. Sherfilis McCormick for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We all are aware that the GI Bill benefits change periodically as Congress provides for new benefits. In the past, we've seen technology delays or otherwise create problems in the delivery of these benefits. Mr. Garcia, how can the VA ensure that the new system is as future-proof as possible?
I'm sorry, ma'am. How do we ensure future-proof, ma'am? How do you define future-proof?
Making sure that we're avoiding the obstacles and the pitfalls from the past.
Avoiding obstacles. Oh. Yes, ma'am. I think that goes back to the governance structure that we have in place with the right people at the right time. We meet constantly. Again, OIT, other players at this table. The governance structure is very important, right? It's the oversight from senior levels, and then program governance is occurring. The PMO office that works for me also ensures the oversight that we continue moving forward. So it's governance and the PMO office that we are increasing the staffing for.
My question then is for Mr. Orifici. What specific steps are being taken and organizational and technologically to ensure longevity?
Yes, so thank you for that question. A big part of what we are trying to do is eliminate the 22 legacy systems that supported education benefits at the start of this process. To date, we have eliminated 2, and we have plans over the course of this effort to modernize all, or decommission all but 2 of the systems that currently support education system and move them onto this modern platform. And so all of the systems that support education service will be on modern technology. They'll no longer be sitting on 50-year-old COBOL programs. And so in that effort, we should be able to continue to modernize and keep the systems current with today's technology.
Thank you. Mr. Mueller, other technology modernization efforts at the VA have struggled with change management and communication. Has MITRE or the VA measured the success of these functions in the Digital GI Bill program? If so, how was it measured?
So we have not measured the functions, but we are supporting the PMO in that space to develop organizational change and stakeholder engagement plans.
Are you using any variables to measure success?
So we'll be developing those measures as the PMO continues to mature.
And as of right now, do you know what variables you might consider in, and what's the delivery date for those variables?
I'll take that back and get back
My
to
next question for you then is, where there are lessons learned regarding change management or communication that can be shared with the rest of the VA modernization efforts?
So at MITRE, we actually have an innovation center that's focused on this space and they work across our sponsor base, across the federal government. We bring those lessons learned when we develop the plans that we work with the sponsor, with the VA on, and that's how we bring that information back.
And what are a few of those lessons learned specifically?
I would have to get back to you to get specifics, but proactive engagement, I would start with that. Proactive engagement, constant communication.
Okay, and so as we're moving forward, what was that delivery date? Because we want to make sure that we have full implementation, success, and that we're measuring what's going forward. Do you know when you'll have those variables and those lessons learned compiled and put together?
I'll have to get back to you on the specific date.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you, ma'am. We will proceed to a third round of questioning, and I recognize myself for 5 minutes. Mr. Michael, there's 14 out of 52 weeks where you can implement this. Is this correct?
Optimal weeks for deployment, sir, yes.
Right on. Do you have those like blocked off on a calendar?
We do have versions of calendars for that.
Have you given a copy of that to Mr. Garcia?
We have a roadmap, but it's probably not identified clearly. We could share
Okay,
that.
let's solve some problems here. Let's pretend like we're all enlisted people still. Sorry, Mr. Garcia. I want you to get a calendar. I want you to block off 14 out of the 52 weeks where you can implement this, and I want you to hand deliver to Mr. Garcia. Mr. Garcia, that's going to help you narrow down so you can answer my ranking member's question. You'll be able to put your finger on this, and I want to know when it's going to happen, because this is, again, completely unacceptable. Are you familiar with the POANM? Did you guys use that in the Air Force? Did you? Do you know what that stands for? Plans of actions and milestones. It's a way that you mission plan so that you can kill terrorists because your guys are trained and women are trained and equipped and they're ready to go. Do you have the plans and actions of milestones developed for this program, which is going to cost over $1 billion gazillion? I don't even know how much money it's going to cost. Do you have a written plan of action and milestone? Do you?
Sir, it's in the integrated master schedule for the releases.
So if you have an integrated master schedule, then either you've been disingenuous with me or it's a bad schedule, because if you have a schedule, sir, that means that you have a calendar. If you have a calendar, you have dates on it. I'm going to keep harping on this. Okay. If you have time, Kyle, I would appreciate it. 14 weeks out of 52. Use a highlighter. Hand them to that dude. And then Mr. Garcia, I want you to put your finger on one of those weeks for us, and I want you to give it to this guy and to me. And we're not doing this anymore. We're not doing bureaucratic gobbledygook and all that. We're not doing that. So Veterans risk their lives for us, as you did. They have earned these education benefits. They're not a gift. They will be able to exercise them, and they're not going to have to worry about paying their rent because your 40-year-old antiquated system doesn't work and you can't tell me when the new one's going to come in. This is unacceptable, and it will not be tolerated. And Mr. Garcia, it is you. It is not the Veterans Administration. It's not a process or an organization. It is you as an individual, and I respect your service as a lieutenant colonel. You're a Mustang. So we call them in the Navy. I respect that. But with that respect comes responsibility, and you are responsible. And with responsibility comes accountability, and we're holding you accountable today. Is that crystal clear, Mr. Garcia?
Yes, sir, it is.
I appreciate that greatly. Mr. Mueller, thank you. You guys are really quiet. I'm sorry. I don't know if you're happy or not that you're not getting drilled. I don't know. It's on either side of the fence. Mr. Mueller, in 2018, one of the recommendations of your company was made to ensure the success of this project, which clearly has not been successful, was that the VA appoint a specific person, like by name, one person, one-stop shop, who would be held accountable to shepherd this project, to champion it. Was that recommendation taken on board?
Thank you for the question. Specific to that 2018 ITA recommendation, that was for the Forever GI Bill implementation.
Yeah.
It was taken. It was identified as the Undersecretary of Benefits at the time.
Who was that?
That was Dr. Paul Lawrence.
Where'd Paul go?
Well, no, so that was the previous Forever GI Bill Comeri implementation. For the digital GI Bill, the accountable official is Mr. Garcia.
All roads lead to Garcia.
And as I stated in my oral testimony, those recommendations were acted on
Okay,
and carried through into the current modernization program.
very well. Mr. Garcia, I believe that we have come to common accord, and I have presented my commander's intent. And I understand that you get what that means. And again, I respect your service tremendously. So I appreciate the fact that you've decided to continue serving our nation. I just want you to step up this game, because all the answers are there. Okay? Finger on calendar, please. I'd appreciate that greatly. With that, I yield back and I recognize my ranking member, Mr. Levin, for 5 minutes.
Thank the Chairman again, and promise this is my last question for you, although it might be one that we'll have to revisit in future hearings or future meetings. In January of 2022, the House passed with a broad bipartisan vote the GI Bill parity legislation for Guard and Reserve. And as we're contemplating your timeline and your plan, which I know you're going to provide to us after this back and forth, are you contemplating the possibility that we may be adding Guard and Reserve eligibility? And if so, are you incorporating that into your thinking at all about the flexibility of more people that are all of a sudden going to be eligible for these benefits?
Sir, we'll take a look at anybody who's eligible, that comes eligible, but I'll have to take that back and get that information to you.
So in the last Congress, we passed it in the House pretty overwhelmingly, and then we ran out, the clock ran out with our friends in the Senate, and we're just going to try again. It wasn't for a lack of interest or a lack of bipartisan agreement. The devil's always in the details on these things, but I think there's a reasonable possibility that in this Congress, next Congress, who knows, that is going to happen, and we are going to see Guard and Reserve that are eligible. I think we learned a lot in the process, and we're going to come back and hopefully get that across the finish line. I just want to make sure you guys are prepared if there are all of a sudden a lot more people who are eligible, that your system can handle it. Is that fair?
Yes, sir, we will be prepared.
All right. And again, I appreciate all that you're doing, and we look forward to seeing those timelines from you. I'll go back.
Thank you, Ranking Member. I now recognize Chairman Rosendale from the great state of Montana.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Garcia and Mr. Michael, what does delaying the next release to the summer of 2024 do to the future releases 7, 8, and 9, both time and cost? If you could give me a quick summary, what we could expect. Mr. Michael first, and then Mr. Garcia, I'll hear your estimate. Time and cost with the delay, 7, 8, and 9.
So moving release 6, there's a degree of critical path, so we need to analyze what can happen for future releases 7, 8, and 9. but they will likely also need to move from current schedule.
So that was stating the obvious, okay? So I know that. So what kind of time are we talking about, though?
Without additional inputs from the VA on what the scope is and how we want to address the dependencies, it's hard for me to speculate on that, sir.
So you couldn't even estimate the time or cost on that. So we're right now scheduled to have this project. The rollouts are supposed to be completed by the end of '24. Am I correct there? Okay. So if we're not going to have version 6 rolled out until next summer, then clearly 7, 8, 9 aren't going to be able to be rolled out until 25 or later, 26. Is that a safe assumption?
As I said, sir,
Are you telling me that there's any realistic possibility that they would be able to be rolled out after the summer of '24, 7, 8, and 9?
so we're looking at options to try to pull back pieces where it makes sense, but also recognize that a number of those are going to be dependent upon completing Release 6 and getting final inputs from the VA.
Understood. If the VA gave you everything that you requested, are you telling me that there's any potential that you would be able to roll those out by the end of next year?
Not in their entirety.
Okay. Mr. Garcia, tell me, version 6 isn't going to roll out until next summer. What do you think, time and cost-wise, this is going to end up taking to complete this project?
Sir, I agree with Mr. Michael. The schedule will be dependent on certain actions occurring first. I think the first commitment is that Release 6 for the summer. 7, 8, 9 will follow that. I can't give you that time schedule right now. As far as the cost, Minor will produce the life cycle cost estimate that will address that additional cost and provide that to you accordingly.
So are we, both of you, do you believe, let's say we go beyond the time, because I think that we're stating the obvious again. You're not going to be able to get this work completed by the end of '24, unless something miraculous happens. So the window of cost is somewhere between $1.3 and $1.9 billion. Can I at least get a commitment that you will not be coming back to this room and saying, we ran out of time and we ran out of money?
The Undersecretary is committed to not coming back for additional funding.
Okay. That doesn't make me sleep well, but I guess that's what we have right now. Mr. Michael, is it true that the project will not be completed before your contract is slated to expire?
Our contract has multiple option years out to, I believe, 2029 or 2030. So I'm not sure that that's a true statement, sir.
Is it broken out to the actual implementation and the operation and maintenance? Are those provisions in there? So the 2029 is probably the operation and maintenance cost, I would assume?
It is, sir.
Okay, so do we have provisions in there that are going to end before you have the rollout completed? Because the rollout's not going to be completed by the end of next year. We're kidding ourselves. So does your contract call for the version 7, 8, 9? Is that portion of the contract going to expire at the end of next year?
I'd have to take this for action, sir, and get you more detail. I don't believe that there's details at that level within the contract. And I think the modification.
So we're going to need a copy of that so that we can see exactly how this is going to be able to proceed. Okay, I'm down to about 36 seconds here. Mr. Garcia, the next DGIB release is on track for 1 year delay. The project won't produce any new capability for an entire year. Do you think that's not going to produce any?
We'll continue with other things besides the major releases, automation efforts that we've been talking about, other minor releases that occur, and the planning that will be in place along with testing to make sure that we will continue with those major releases in the future. So it's not that we're stopping, we're continuing to make progress.
Okay. I yield back, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to make a couple closing remarks here. I want to thank you all for coming. I appreciate it greatly. Mr. Garcia, not a great afternoon for you. I appreciate that. I want you guys to come back here, and I want to have a great day together. That's what I want. The sole intent of this subcommittee, the reason we exist in Congress, is to make sure that our veterans receive the benefits that they earned. And they're not going to do that unless you step up your game. It's not going to happen. I expect you to be more proactive with us. And I'm telling you, if we don't get the answers that we want in a timely manner, I will subpoena you. And I will bring you here, and I'll call CNN, and we'll shine bright lights right in your eyes. And it will be a very bad day. And I do not want to do that. But I will, because it ain't about me or you or Mr. Levin or Rosendale or anybody else here. It's about the person that does their time in the military, risk their lives, they leave their family, and they want to better themselves and become a productive member of society, just as they were a productive member of the military. And they do that through education, because education is the only way that you can free the mind, and you know that. So we're going to get this done. And we're going to get it done with you, or we're going to get rid of you. And we're going to find somebody else to do it, because it has to happen. It is not an option. All right. That I yield back, and I'd like my ranking member to recognize him if you have any closing comments.
All of that.
Chairman Rosendale, do you have any closing comments?
Just, look, thank you all for coming in. This is one system that started off really well, and we just want to make sure it finishes well. That's all. We just want to make sure it finishes well. Let's not drop the ball at this point. Let's keep this thing going.
Very well. I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material without objection. So ordered. This hearing is adjourned.